Glad to have you join us.
Pleasure is me. Thank you very much.
What are your thoughts on the current state of advertising practice and the industry itself in Nigeria?
Well, for me, I think the industry is a lot better than what it used to be. The industry spend is increasing. Unethical practices has reduced. Compliance with business rules and regulation are better now. The respect between sectoral group is a lot, has improved a lot. So if you ask me generally, we may not be where we are headed, but there's been a lot of improvement from where we used to be.
What are the initiatives embarked upon by ARCON to improve the advertising practice in Nigeria?
If you look at it, you can look at it from two angles: the practice of advertising and the business of advertising. Now, in the practice of advertising comes with the individual corporate license and all those things in that space. So we have improved so many things, we've reviewed so many things, we invest in research, we've done things that programs that are going to bring the town and ground together for conversation. We investing in capacity building and so many things in that practice, both from our own end and from the industry leg. In terms of the business of advertising, the issue of communication regulation, the interest of general public, that's one part. The issue of stakeholders relationship in terms of business framework is also there. The ISOB is there. So these are some of the things, the holistic, if you bring everything together, these are some of the things that is shaping or that are shaping the future of the practice in Nigeria.
How would you explain the implications of the recent judgment by the Federal High Court on advertising practice in Nigeria and as it relates to ARCON's statutory position?
Wow, that law, that judgment is omnibus. Omnibus to the extent that it covers a huge, wide area. And it has answered so many questions. First of all, let's start from where we were before now. We used to be ARCON. And when we were ARCON, we lost 5 cases in the court. Some are the High Court, some are the Appeal Court. Now, this judgment specifically stated that that judgment was in the past. In the past, to the extent that the element of that judgment are not valid again in this new regime. Because then they were talking of Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria. Now they are talking about Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, which is talking about the remit. So the remit of that law is to practitioners, while the remit of this law covers the practitioners on one leg, then the practice of advertising, the activity, the trade of advertising on the second leg. So that's on one part. So on that remit too, the issue of where, first let's talk about the constitutionality of the law. The judgment held, because some people came up with the issue of freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want. So ARCON's law is against my freedom of speech. But freedom of speech is not absolute. There are restrictions to freedom of speech. When your freedom is going to negatively affect my freedom, then your freedom stops. Now, the law specifically states that the federal government under the Constitution, the National Assembly under this Constitution, has the exclusive right to make law on practice or profession. 2, on trade and activities. Now, advertising, if you look at the law, it says to regulate advertising, which is the practice, the profession. Advertisement, which is the trade and activities. and marketing communication, which is within the body of marketing communication is divided into different sectors. You have the PR, you have the advertising and other things like that. So everything relating to advertising, to the issue of the constitutionality of that law has been resolved. So it does not in any way violate the constitution. So the judgment clearly states that the National Assembly has that power. Now, it now goes into that law and say by virtue of the long title, we say this is the remit of that law to regulate advertising, advertisement, and marketing communication. It also gives the power to the council to make bylaws as it relates to advertising, advertisement, and marketing communication, which means that first, like the ISO, Advertising Industry Standard of Practice, that was promulgated by the council, that was issued, the proclamation that was issued by the council is also in line. Two, the Code of Advertising. These are some of the bylaws that were issued as long as it relates to advertising management in Nigeria. So the law established that. Now, the law further went ahead to uphold the power of the council to vet and approve all advertisement before exposure in line with that law. Now, this has been in contention, and this has been looked at from different views. My right, my freedom of, no. The law states that, the judgment states that ARCON has that power to vet and approve. Don't forget that in that law, the law created a 21-man committee called Advertising Standard Panel that's supposed to sit and vet and look at materials before they are exposed. Now, that law upholds that part. In addition, the law further reiterated the definition of media in the law. And what is the definition of media? Anything that can expose your advert to the public is called a media. Now, let's take, for example, Facebook, because the law was specific about Instagram. Your Instagram page is your page. Now, you have two options, either to make your Instagram page private or public. If you make it private, while our people are doing monitoring and enforcement, they cannot see what you post because it is strictly for your audience. However, if you make your post public or your page public and you start putting advert there, then your platform becomes a public platform, and anything on such platform must comply with the advertising law of Nigeria. So specifically, the law covers practically all areas of contention as of today.
What are some of the infractions encountered in restoring professionalism in the Nigerian advertising ecosystem?
Wow. For me, it also falls along two lines. First of all, you can look at it from the business of advertising, from the message, and maybe from the practice. Now, if you are looking at it from the business of advertising, one of our major challenge is how do we restore sanity? For example, we talk about engagement procedure. There's an ethical way to engage an agency, which we are still having issues. People calling for pitch until we have to insist on professional procedure, compliance with the standard. We still have situation where people disengage agencies and they are owing them millions of naira. Whereas before they even call Jack Daniel, they are brought in another agency. Now, this is one of the things I tell people. If you are owing a media and advertising agency 100 million or 500 million, in that 500 million, what may be for that particular agency, maybe 20%, sometimes 50%. So the remaining, if for example 500 million, if you are owing an agency 500 million, what you are owing the agency in terms of their own money may not be more than 20%, which is maybe 100 million. The remaining 400 million is owed to media owners. Out of home, print, broadcast, new media. Now, that is, now if you now fire the agency you are owing 500 million, you move to another agency. The same media houses will start doing business with another agency on the same brand. Now, if you owe that place again 500 million, you are owing the media by extension. You are just so it is a huge the payment threshold. We have made a presentation to the Honorable Minister, who has directed that we should rid the advertising industry of debt and unethical practices. So, in the next few days, ARCON with the ISOP committee will go after all this. In terms of messaging, we still have a lot of violation. I was still discussing with my monitoring team. There is a particular, not to mention it, one of the financial institutions, which is not a full bank, in the last 1 week has exposed over 20 unvetted adverts on the social media. And this is calling for unsubstantiated claims, bogus promises. And these things are not verified. When you set advert for vetting, we are not just going to look at the cases. Sometimes when you make claim, we do a third-party intelligence to confirm. Sometimes when you say, you've seen situations where somebody say, we have several cars to give. We call them to substantiate. We discover it's just 3. But they are ready to say we have several cars to give. So this, some advert as I told, look at what happened to CBEC. If I am right, and I think I should be right, the figure being branded is between 1.2 trillion and 1.5 trillion. If you take that out of an economy, you know definitely some houses will never recover from it. Now, what happens? We have a situation where a celebrity come out and say, everybody come and buy land. People came, they bought the land. The same celebrity came back and said, I'm sorry, I did not know they are fraudulent. This same thing was done in US. Kim Kardashian advertised crypto. And she was banned. She was fined $1.2 million and later was banned from advertising crypto on her platform. So the effect of unregulated advertising space is huge and damaging on the public and the financial system. So you can imagine how many things. So for us, it's a huge responsibility between ensuring there's compliance with the advertising industry standard of practice and ensuring compliance. Everybody wants to say anything. Come, we'll give you, bring 1 naira, we'll give you 100 naira. So we need to at all times be on our toes to make sure that we are doing the necessary monitoring and enforcement.
Now, about maintaining this monitoring and enforcement, how about practitioners responding to the various reforms being introduced by ARCON?
Yes, they are the ambassador of the profession, and they are because I also must say thank you to them, because most times, most of the things that we hear, we see, they are as a result of our practitioners giving us intelligence report to say this is happening here, this is happening here, go after this, do this. So they've been very, very supportive as far as the reform is concerned.
Now, how does ARCON address the issue of capital flight resulting from the production of advertisements abroad?
Let me also say again that the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Mohammed Idris, we had a session with him. And again, this is in line with the Renew Hope agenda. If you see recently, the president signed a law about ensuring local production of goods and services. The one he did with the BPP, and there are some other laws that have been put in place to ensure they promote local. So that's on one part. Now, as it relates to our industry, let me cite small example. And this is what I've said at different fora. It takes a whole village to produce an advert, which simply means that if you want to produce an advert, you need a model. Because you need a model, you need a costumier. Because you need a model, you need a makeup artist. You need a voiceover artist. Now, you need a light engineer. You need sound. You need production crew. You need security. You need people taking care of the entertainment. You need DOP. And so, now, budget of adverts sometimes can be as high as 500 million naira. It can be as high as 750 million naira, depending on the brief and the size of the magnitude of the commercial. Now, you can now imagine if you now want to do that commercial. Now, let's look at some indices. In terms of population, Nigeria has the highest population in Africa. Population, physical population. Now, in terms of internet penetration, Nigeria has the highest. In fact, the number of active internet users in Nigeria are far higher than some countries in Africa combined. Because sometimes they will tell you that the active internet users in Nigeria are between 120 and 130 million. Sometimes between 100 and 130. And that was why when some countries want to go on digital media space war with Nigeria, they easily back off. Now, you now look at that, which is supposed to be a benefit to us as a country. We have the people. We are very important and relevant in the digital space. And you want to sell a market to us. And you are spending like 750 million. Now, instead of you now coming here, get a model here, get a voiceover artist here, get a production engineer here, get a DOP here, get everything here. You now took this money to another market, maybe in South Africa or in Kenya. You now shoot your commercial. You do everything there. So you have spent your 750 million. 750 million naira there. When you now finish, you know, in this industry, production is always completed before, payment is completed before you release. So they will pay before they leave that country. So you have given them 750 million naira. You are now coming back to Nigeria with a flash drive that you have done what you want to do. Now, when you now come back, you want to give it to the media houses to say plug and play. The question we ask is, are Nigerians not good enough to take the benefit? So in terms of modeling, what model are you looking for that you cannot find in Nigeria? In terms of voice, what voice are you looking for? So the directive is that ARCON must put in place policies that will ensure that production of adverts meant for the Nigerian market, including the talent that are going to be used in those, are done here. So it is more of an inclusive growth policy that has its traction on everything that is relevant to this industry in terms of communication. So it's been a very big, huge challenge because people come to blackmail you. We want to do a single communication across market, and no, there's nothing you find in those places in terms of ambience that you can't find there. There's nothing. So the policy now is for inclusive growth and promotion of local content, which we are pursuing in line with the directive of the federal government.
And this has been an interesting and enlightening session. Thank you very much for having this with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been speaking with the Director General, Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria, ARCON, Dr. Olalekan Fadolapo. Thank you, sir. That's all we can have today. I am Bababumi Agbibi.